Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Armchair Analysts, the only podcast too afraid of Frank Skinner to use the actual Three Lions audio as an intro sting. My name is Cameron MacDonald, and I've spent 3 years working as an FA licensed intermediary here in the UK. My co-host Rupert Meadows has written and broadcasted about all things football on platforms such as TalkSport, Radio and Give Me Sport. But above all else, we're fans.
And we're England fans. Thanks for that, Cam. And we are officially into the knockout stages of Euro 2020. We're going to be looking at England's chances and what they need to do to beat Germany in one of the most hotly anticipated international matchups in a long time, I'd say. As always, timestamps are in the description. And before we get into England, let's just do a whistle-stop tour of how the groups wrapped up.
Yeah, of course, because we published on Monday, so we missed a couple of them wrapping up. A few, interesting things to look at. Obviously, the first one I've got written down here is Spain finally getting into gear and beating Slovakia 5-0. Really interesting game. Martin Dubravka kind of opened his own team's floodgates. But Spain really found their footing in this game. They're a team that both of us thought might be going out in the groups, but they definitely looked like things fell into place. Pedri had an amazing game. Sarabia had a fantastic game as well. I wonder now, it's one of those things where you're sort of looking at that game and you go, is this the Spain we're going to see in the knockouts? Or is the Spain that we saw in the first team going to be the Spain we see in the knockouts? Because the two are very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely different. I mean, I think presumably not every team that they play will let them play the football that they wanted to play. And I mean, just Spain were all over them from start to finish. Really dominated the game on every kind of metric you could measure statistic-wise. So it's encouraging that they managed to, get their stuff together and put comfortably their best performance in over 90 minutes. But time will tell whether or not.
Arguably not just their best performance, but the best performance of any team in this competition so far, which is quite an interesting, because it'd be one thing if they won 2-0 or 3-0, but they've blasted past what even your Italys and your Netherlands have been doing.
Yeah, no, that's actually a fair point, not one I thought about. I think I would say any of these teams can put in a performance like that. Like a Spain, a Germany, an Italy, a Portugal, a France, a Netherlands, they all have the potential to put in one of these kind of performances. But you're right that Spain probably have shown the most dominant match so far.
The Group of Death was another really exciting one, really lived up to the hype that it had such an explosive finish. Over the course of the 90 minutes that those two games were played on, Portugal were in every position in the group. They were in first, second, third and fourth as the games were going on. And Hungary at times was second place in the group and set to be facing England in the round of 16. And what an absolute rollercoaster this pair of games was. I mean, both games had their sort of amazing points. I think the highlight across both of them was probably just after Germany scored their first and Hungary immediately replied and got a second. My heart was in my mouth for that. But both the games were amazing. Ronaldo obviously, breaking or matching certainly a record of the most international goals scored. So it was the Group E and Group F summaries were in the same day. What a day of football that was. And of course, Sweden and Poland had a real late sort of drama and Poland nearly qualified. So that was just a fantastic day of football, E and F.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was very jealous of your two screens because I had just the one and I was furiously flipping between them to not miss anything. And yeah, just such fun. And did you also see this crazy Karim Benzema statistic?
No, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So in the Portugal-France game, Benzema became the only player in football history to score 2 goals in the same second.
Oh, I did see this, yeah.
In 1 minute and 44 seconds into extra time of the first half, and then in the 44 seconds into the second half.
Yeah, I did see that on Twitter actually. That's a great stat for sure.
Surely will not be repeated.
So the Group of Death was fantastic for other reasons, and in the other groups we had, much like Spain got their act together, Croatia sort of cobbled things together at the sort of final whistle. It's interesting. We're going to talk about the knockouts after England that Croatia play Spain because both teams have sort of had a little bit of an uninspiring start and then maybe got things together against a weaker member of the group, but nonetheless sort of started to get things together as they got through. And the last one is that Denmark managed to come back from the brink. We thought it was basically impossible they were going to do it. I thought Russia were really going to play a cagey sort of game, but they managed to do it. They beat Russia by enough goals to also secure the goal difference because of that sort of rock, paper, scissors head-to-head. And what a great sort of, I hope it's not the end of their story, but what a great sort of conclusion to the group that we thought they'd all sort of been cheated out of because of that horrible thing that happened to Christian Eriksen.
Yeah, it was really heartwarming. And the way they did it as well, there was so much passion and so much fight in their performance. And for example, when Andreas Christensen scored that scorcher
Banger.
and then just went nuts, that it was a real, that again was like a joy to watch. There was just so much good football
I mean,
this
to be
week.
fair, that goal was any team in the world could have scored that. That would have been a joy to watch that goal. Absolute scorcher.
Absolutely.
Looking at England versus Germany, and this
Let's
is
get into it.
such a big game. Obviously, Germany coming to Wembley. There's sort of vibes of already we talked about Euro '96 with Scotland and how the UK media really played that up. Now we've got England versus Germany, which is of course in the semi-final of Euro '96 before they went on to beat the Czech Republic in the final. And these two sides obviously have a huge football history of being massive rivals. And Germany coming to Wembley is, to many, a really exciting opportunity to sort of establish how good this England side is, beat one of the world's best teams, and beat sort of our long-time rivals. Others are looking at it and going, oh dear, we're in sort of like the second to best tier of the football teams, whereas Germany is sort of very much at the top. But I think there's a lot going on in that story. I mean, obviously, Germany lost to France, couldn't really get in gear there, and people going, they look a bit half-finished. They smashed Portugal, but then they drew with Hungary. And I think it's interesting to look at what we've seen from Germany so far and also look at what we've seen from England so far and sort of pose the question. I'll ask you and then I'll give my own sort of thoughts. If England are to beat Germany, if England are to get a result and have a famous win against Germany, how are they to do it?
Well, I mean, I think what makes this such a fun matchup is that despite the narrative being that it's going to be potentially quite a comfortable game for Germany and we're going to have to really pull it out the bag to win, I think that's true. But I think we could, because tactically we're not such a bad matchup for them. I think there's definitely things that we can do in different areas of the pitch that will give us a pretty solid chance against Germany. It's just, part of it is whether or not those things will actually be done.
So the way I've been looking at it is sort of, what do we know about Germany so far this tournament? What have we seen about sort of their strengths and weaknesses? Because they've had a real variance of games, literally a win, a loss and a draw. And Germany have a very specific style. They've played in a 3-4-3 in every game so far. They've had the fullback sort of joining the attack to create a pseudo front five. And what that's really good at is overloading a flat back four. We saw that against Portugal. They just got completely overwhelmed. Gersons and Kimmich are the main threats in terms of chance creation. A lot of people have sort of been looking at Toni Kroos and Gundogan and sort of going, for their respective club sides, they play a lot through the middle. But actually what they've been doing in most of these games is playing it wide instead of trying to play it through the middle, which then leads to sort of Gersons and Kimmich either cutting in themselves and going for goal, or cutbacks and crosses, which has been really essential to their attacking game. And we've seen, conversely, this was really, really effective against Portugal in a flat back four, but they struggled to do this effectively against Hungary, who employed a 3-5-2 and had wing-backs matching Germany's wing-backs. So when I look at all of the evidence of Germany's group stage performance so far, it seems to me, and you might disagree, but it seems to me that a back three or a back five is key to limiting their offensive effectiveness.
Yeah, so what we're going to get into later is, how we see England lining up, and we'll kind of break that down. But I do agree that definitely, even if it's not a back three or a back five, we need to have our fullbacks pushing wide and pushing high in order to combat Germany's attack. Because you're absolutely right that, the chances will come in from wide spaces, and Kimmich especially is just so strong. It's funny though, because despite the fact that you say, you're right, they're not playing through their midfield, they still have a really dangerous midfield that can stifle a lot of attacking play from an opposition, because Kroos matched with just the energy and the dynamism of Gundogan, and then also looks like, I would say Goretzka's probably going to start because he's had a couple of really good games. And they are just so energetic, and they put a big shift in. So that also will be a challenge for us. I agree though that they're good. They're good wide. I think that England are going to miss Mount probably. I mean, as good as Grealish has been, I think this game would have suited Mount better because he's more physical, he's more defensive, he's more combative. But that just is what it is.
I agree that this game suits Mount quite well, and I also think because his isolation ends the day before this game, and him and Chilwell have been training, not with the rest of the squad, but they have been training, so I don't know that it's confirmed that he won't be able to play this game.
Yeah, true. It hasn't been confirmed yet. That's the problem, I guess, of making this video not the day before or like the hour before, but a couple of days before as a preview. I think if Mount is fit, he has to start. But I think, Grealish is not exactly the worst backup in the world because he's performed really well, and I would also be happy to see him in. I just think Mount fits this game better, not Grealish is worse as a player. I think we talked about Germany's strengths a little bit. I think balls in from deep is great. They also, they do like to switch the play quite a lot, which caught Portugal out a couple of times, definitely for the goals. In terms of their weaknesses, I would say, weirdly, I almost feel like their strengths are also kind of their weaknesses. Germany also are susceptible to changes in play, as we saw with Portugal's goals. They're susceptible to balls in from deep, like the goal they conceded against Hungary. And then on top of that, they're also pretty primed to be hit on the counter. They play a high line, their defence is not that fast, and I think that'll really be where England will find the best chances is, pushing our play a little wider than we have been, and also having just willing runners in the wingers and the striker.
Definitely, and that's I think that's a really good way to put it, their strengths and their weaknesses, because one of the symptoms of having those fullbacks that basically join the front five is that then in their back three, the two outside centre-backs sort of come out a little bit to sort of almost become fullbacks themselves, which means there's huge amounts of space in their back line, as well as it being a high line, so a runner in behind can really, really hurt them. As we've seen in all their matches so far, it's been pacey players that have punished them the most. So looking at sort of just a little fun exercise, I'm going to throw up the graphics for any of our people who are watching this on YouTube instead of listening via sort of just audio. Looking at our 11s, and we've both gone away. We've come up with our 11 that we would choose, not that necessarily Gareth Southgate would choose, but we think would give us the best chance of beating Germany. So do you want to go first and give us your 11?
Yeah, sure. Happy to go first. I think I've tried to blend the two. I've tried to go for a side that I would be happy with, but also a side that I at least hope is within, Southgate's ruminations. So, for example, I've stuck with a 4 at the back, but what I've gone for is something that we've talked about a little bit as well, is I'm going to have one of the defensive midfielders drop into the defensive line so that we can push our fullbacks wide. So the back 4 that I've gone for is fullbacks Reece James and Luke Shaw. I think they're our best bets at playing wide and playing well wide. I could understand why maybe Southgate might try and play someone like Kieran Trippier because he's good defensively, but I would rather have Shaw in there. And then Maguire and Stones as the two centre-backs. And then for I've gone for a 4-2-3-1, but really I would like it to be more of a 4-3-3 in the sense that I want it to be kind of a dynamic, changing midfield, a midfield that's able to rotate. So at the base is going to be Declan Rice, and I want to see Declan Rice dropping in between Maguire and Stones at times, because that will allow not only someone like Reece James to also push up in a way that he hasn't when the ball's on the left, because oftentimes when we have one fullback pushing up, the other one has to kind of tuck in. I want Declan Rice to be able to tuck in there, and I also want, when we're defending, for him to come in and make a 3 centre-back partnership so that Reece James and Luke Shaw can stay wide as well. And then the second part of this kind of midfield dynamism for me is going to be Calvin Phillips, and I want to see the Calvin Phillips that we saw against Croatia. I think that having a fluid midfield like we saw France play against Germany and play well and nullify and win the game. I think we want Phillips back to what he was doing before, which was pushing really far up the pitch at times. I kind of want it to be a little bit meted out because Rice definitely got isolated against Scotland, for example, and we really struggled to build up from the back because Phillips and Mount would both push up high and Rice would be left kind of marked by 2 or 3 different Scotland players. So I don't want Phillips pushing up the whole time, but I do want him arriving late at times and being able to be a little bit flexible tactically. And then I kind of think what we haven't talked about yet is that tactical flexibility and being able to kind of shift positions. And so for that reason, I put Saka in this team. I think he's actually going to be really key to, whether or not we win this game. He played so well against was against Czech Republic in like the forward runs that he made, breaking the lines. I think if we're going to hit Germany on the counter, Saka is going to be crucial to that.
Yeah, definitely agree on that, yeah.
I'd put Grealish in the midfield, attacking midfield, but I'd happily have Mount in there if he's available. I think both will do a great job. And then I actually would rather have Sancho on the left than Sterling. But again, I don't know if that's just being incredibly ambitious. You know, take aside how incredibly creative and attacking he is. He just knows the Bundesliga.
Yeah,
it surely
100%.
would make sense to have him in there as a player who understands German football really, really well. So despite the fact that Sterling's been our only goal scorer, I actually would rather have Sancho start. And I also just think he's another creative hub. He's really good at running in behind. He stays wide. I'd love to have him there. And then finishing out my attack, to be honest, I'd actually happily have Dominic Calvert-Lewin up top.
Oh, big call, but I like it.
I just feel like if we're going to get anything from this game, yes, Kane's good, and I said flexibility is good, but if we want to hit someone on the counter, you need a striker that's going to stay as a striker. And I've just lost a lot of confidence in Kane's ability to do that. So I want a striker who's going to stay on the heels of the centre-backs, 4 balls going in over the top. And I just back Dominic Calvert-Lewin to do that better than Kane, but I'm quite confident Kane will start.
And also, so the other thing that Dominic Calvert-Lewin has in spades that Harry Kane doesn't really have any of is pace. And we're talking about sort of that high line. Exactly, there were some moments against the Czech Republic where a ball went over the top or a ball went through, and Harry Kane was sort of like waddling towards the ball and was easily outpaced. Whereas Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you get an incisive through ball and he can definitely run onto it. Yeah, no, I really like that 11. I think that's, this is obviously us if we were manager for a day. I don't think it's necessarily what Gareth Southgate would go for, but I really like it, and I think that would give us a fantastic chance. And I like, as well, sort of the tactical flexibility. I like the ability to sort of have Declan Rice come back into the defence and sort of push the fullbacks up a little bit further. I've gone for something slightly different to you, but with some of the same ideas. I think that the way we should line up with this team is we should match Germany with a 3-4-3. I'm starting Pickford in goal, of course, and then I want a back 3 of Stones on the right side, Maguire in the middle, and Tyrone Mings on the left. In the midfield, I'm going to want Kyle Walker at right wing back. I'm going to want a pivot, sort of a two midfield of Calvin Phillips, and if he's fit, Mason Mount, and then Bukayo Saka at left wing back. And then up top, I'm going to want a front 3 of Jack Grealish on the left, Jadon Sancho on the right, Harry Kane up front. And there's a couple of reasons that I've gone for a few different players than you. I think Walker and Saka will be key for me. I know you talked about how good Saka is sort of in that last game, but I'm looking at both Walker and Saka as sort of being the players that you have stuck on Gertens and Kimmich. I also think that you have the added benefit with Saka is that in attacking phases, he can raid forwards and we can sort of convert to more of a back 4. Tyrone Mings is the person I put on the left side of the defence for that reason, because he's left-footed, he's played as a left back before, and I think that if we need, when we sort of have a lot of the ball and we're moving forwards, Saka can just have freedom to maraud up that left-hand side, and Jack Grealish, who will be on the left wing normally, can sort of tuck inside to that left half space and sort of play more like a 10. So it sort of means that you can shift the shape quite nicely, and it gives Saka options beyond just crossing or cutting back. You can sort of see Grealish in that left half space, cut back to him, it opens up another area of play. I think the double pivot of Rice and Phillips has been best when Phillips was able to turn into an 8 against Croatia, but otherwise it's been a little bit uninspired for me. So I'm dropping Rice as a player. Sure. I love Declan Rice as a player. I think he's really, really great. It hasn't been his best tournament. And I think that Mason Mount is such a key player when it comes to connecting the attack and the defence through the middle. I mean, obviously a lot of our game plan is going to be played out on the wings, because that's where Germany are going to try and move the ball, and that's where ideally we want to try and move the ball if we want to stay ahead. But I think when the ball does come through the middle, if you have Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips sat in front of that back 3, it's just going to be a lot of back and forth. Whereas Mason Mount, I can see a lot more sort of seeing out of the corner of his eye, Saka bombing down, or Jadon Sancho making a really incisive run, or Jack Grealish sort of getting past someone. I think that's just a really good connected piece. Obviously, that is dependent on if he's able to, but based on what I've been reading, it seems like he will be, but we'll see. And as much as I love Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I really wanted us to try him out against the Czech Republic, just to see if his form is better than Harry Kane's at the tournament, I'd give Harry Kane the chance to run out in this team, just because I think Harry Kane's problem is sort of twofold. I think part of it is just him not playing very intelligently, which if I'm manager for a day, maybe I could change. But also,
yeah, sure.
but also, I just think it'd be interesting to try him out in a different system. I think this system is going to be conducive to a high volume of crosses from wide areas, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin is definitely no slouch in the air. He's fantastic in the air, but I just think Harry Kane is also just like such a bullish classic number 9 that I think that if you have the direction of him just going, do not leave the final third, Harry, do not drop back to defensive midfield again, you could get a lot out of Grealish sort of having a lot of trickery, and Saka and Sancho sort of bombing down the wings. And then Sancho, as you sort of talked about there, he's not only one of England's best players, but he's spent the last 4 seasons terrorising half the Bundesliga. Like, if you're Ginter and you've been pulled wide sort of via fullback and you see Jadon Sancho running at you, your blood's going to run cold because you're going to think, oh God, he did it to me twice this season already. So I think I would go for that. What I would say is that I'd be quite brutal with someone like Harry Kane. If Harry Kane drops, when we get to the half, he's dropped into the defensive mid too many times, I'm just subbing him off at half time for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. No forgiveness. I'm being more lenient than you and giving him another 45 minutes to turn his tournament around. But if he doesn't do it in those 45 minutes, you're off.
Just savage him, yeah.
It's fun. I just think it's interesting with Saka, because I really do think, and this might just be recency bias because he played so well against the Czech Republic, I just really believe that Bukayo Saka could be our secret weapon to beating Germany. I just think that the fact that he's played at a Premier League level for Arsenal as both a winger and a fullback, and that is the area that we need to have a player excelling in, and being fluid between those two roles is how we can win the game. And you can look at people like Kyle Walker or Luke Shaw, for example, and go, oh, they're really good marauding, attacking fullbacks. But in Bukayo Saka, you've got a player who is literally both a fullback and a winger. And I think when you think about, for example, goal threats, if you see Luke Shaw running forwards down the byline, pretty safe bet he's going to cross it. Whereas Bukayo Saka, he's got a good cross in him, but he can also cut in and try and score himself, which I think just leaves Germany guessing more. He's also very, very pacey. I think he's faster than any of the other options we have at the moment. So I think just everything he offers could be the sort of key unlocking the secret to beating Germany.
Yeah, he's definitely faster than Luke Shaw or Ben Chilwell. I guess my feeling was that I wanted to, because I agree with you, he kind of is the secret weapon, and I think that's, you know, where we're going to have a lot of purchase in this game. My concern was that having him as a fullback would maybe put him too much on the defensive, so he wouldn't be able to be too dynamic. But I like the way that you've set up with Tyrone Mings at left centre-back, so that when pushing forwards, he can be a little bit freer because we can convert to a 4 at the back. I definitely like that system. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you said you think you can get better out of Harry Kane tactically, but he's not the most intelligent player, so you're going to change the entire system around him that he's played all season in.
Well, I like to think, listen, I haven't got any UEFA coaching badges, but I like to think the conversation I have with Harry Kane would be very simple, something even he could follow. I would literally just go, listen, Harry, you see those lines on the pitch? If you look down and you're not inside the box, but most of the other players are, you're doing something wrong. If you look back and the line you see is the halfway line, you're doing something wrong. At best, the furthest back I want you is as high up as the defence. Do not be further than them. And I think even Harry could follow that because the lines are already there. So I could use that. I could even sort of like draw a little picture for him and go, you need to be here and never here.
I mean, you would think. It is a weird one, isn't it? Because like, surely it would be that simple, but then he consistently doesn't do that. So you're like, I don't know who's at fault there. But yeah, I like the side. I think I like the way you explained it as well. I think I instinctively would have wanted to have Kyle Walker as right centre back, but I actually agree with you that he'd work well at wing back over someone like Reece James, just because he's a little bit more solid defensively without really compromising too much in attack.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at well, should we go into the rest of the knockouts, or should we sort of continue to celebrate the fact that it's coming home because of our tactical now, and if we don't play these 11s, either of our 11s, and we lose, that's why we've lost, not because of any other reason.
Yeah, you know, I just think we've done it. I think we've won the title for England. This is England. It's coming home confirmed. I think it's quite funny how like I started out being like, I can't logically justify having a 5 at the back because that's not what Southgate would do. But then going in and changing literally everything else about Southgate's system. But
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
No,
I think definitely you're right. I think if Southgate is willing to play a five at the back, I think that's probably our best bet.
I think we've got to be bold in this game, and I think that means really bold decisions like dropping Raheem Sterling. I understand Raheem Sterling is our top goal scorer and indeed only goal scorer this tournament, and a lot of people have sort of said you can't drop Sterling, he scored the goals. When you really think about those 2 goals that he's scored, they've been made entirely by the players. The one against Croatia was a really good pass by Calvin Phillips, and then he sort of was lucky that it ended up going in. And then the one against the Czech Republic was basically Bukayo Saka picking up from deep, Grealish then having the ball and doing some trickery, and then Grealish crossing it in and Sterling headering it sort of into goal, which is obviously you have to climb to get the header, but 90% of the job has been done for him. If, conversely, he'd sort of had a goal where he'd sort of run through 5 players and then sort of put it top bins, I think it'd be a bit harder to drop him. But on the strength of those 2 goals specifically, I would have no qualms in resting him in favour of someone like Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, for sure. We'd definitely be having a different conversation. I think one thing that's interesting to note, and I do like instinctively your idea that we need to kind of be aggressive and be on the front foot. The only thing that I want to raise is that that's not what France did. And France arguably have a much stronger side than we do. France gave Germany the lion's share of possession. They allowed 9 shots for Germany and only took 3 themselves. But crucially, 1 shot on target each because they managed to reduce Germany to just kind of half chances and slim opportunities. But I do wonder if maybe we want to play a slightly different game in terms of how much ball we try and take up, like how much possession we want to have. I think we kind of want to be maybe very slightly below 50%. I don't think what's worked or what we tried to do in the group stage matches, which is have more than half possession comfortably, is really going to play to our strengths against Germany. I do think we want to hit them on the counter, and that is still a way to be aggressive, but we've got to balance out, sitting back and defending well with still like not letting Germany take over the game, which is what France did so well.
Yeah, no, I take that. The only reason, when I was looking at the 3 games Germany have played so far and really thinking about them, the one that I sort of gave the least thought to was the France game for 2 reasons. Firstly, just because it was the very first game of the tournament. It had the sense for long periods of that game of sort of 2 teams sort of feeling each other out, as is often the case with these first games. And secondly, France have a couple of assets that no other tournament of the team does in terms of N'Golo Kante and Kylian Mbappe. So I think to try and play the same midfield game as France do for any team is kind of chasing a dream. And so when I was thinking about what parts from the group stages that England could take, despite the fact that that was the one team that beat Germany, I looked at the France game the least.
Definitely more hungry than France. Yeah. To be fair, I do definitely get where you're coming from there, and I think if we try to play like France, we might well come unstuck. But it's just something to note that that's how even like a very talented side played against Germany was more kind of the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, very true. Looking at the rest of the knockouts and some of the other teams, some of the matchups, the favourable side of the draw is quite an interesting one because it looks like one side of the round of 16 is vastly preferable. And this happens sometimes. It sort of happened this year with the Champions League. Obviously, when we looked at that sort of the side that Chelsea was on, it was like, oh, could there be dark horses on the basis of that alone? And whoever wins out of Germany and England won't have to play any of Belgium, Portugal, France, Italy, or Spain. And the Netherlands are sort of the only other top side in that end of the bracket. Although, of course, in a tournament format, you never know if sort of the Czech Republic are going to come through, or Ukraine, or Sweden. What did you think about this side of the draw? Is there anyone you fear beyond Germany, particularly?
Yeah, I think the most obvious concern after we beat Germany, I say after, there's no if, because Gareth Southgate's probably listening right now, is when we take on the Netherlands, I think that will be a tough fixture in the semis. So that would be the main one for me that I'm wary of. I mean, to be honest, I kind of think any of these teams could beat us on a day. I think Ukraine have looked dangerous. If they can nick a great goal, then they've got a chance. I think we've struggled against Sweden in the past. Denmark, Denmark have kind of become this like black horse in my mind, black sheep, just because the dark horse. I mix dark horse and black sheep.
You went through all the metaphors, all the things there.
Yeah, well, Denmark, just because they're just a rogue side now. They've made it through against all the odds, and I fear playing them as well.
They have sort of got that playing for a higher power thing going on for them as well. It's like, everyone else is playing for glory and they're playing for glory, and also like Christian Eriksen, who's sort of, just cheering them on in spirit, etc., etc.
They do indeed. But yeah, definitely, obviously, that left-hand side of the bracket is comfortably stronger. I do think we're going to get at least one upset, just because that's kind of how probability works. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know, one of these big teams. I could see Austria beating Italy, even to be honest, even though Italy have looked so good.
Well, that was going to be my next question to you, sort of, which is the most one-sided matchup, and which of these games could you see being a quote-unquote upset? Because I was looking at some of the numbers earlier. The bookies have sort of listed all of the sort of round of 16 games. Italy versus Austria is the most favoured one-sided. Italy have, according to the bookies, an 80% chance to win. France, Switzerland comes second. France have a 79% chance to win. And then, oddly, the third most one-sided round of 16 game apparently is Spain versus Croatia. Apparently Spain have, according to the bookies, 74% chance of winning, which seemed weird to me. That seems kind of like, as we were talking earlier about sort of how they finished the groups, two teams kind of on level footing. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, just because they've had similar paths through. I guess just if you look at the side, Spain have the history of success. Croatia were an old team. I do feel like, in making those odds, maybe they've relied a little too heavily on past games rather than, current setup. But
that's what I mean, just the squads as well. The squads as well. Like, when you look at their squads, do you think Spain's squad is considerably stronger than Croatia's? I think you could argue it's not even stronger, full stop.
I think they definitely have a depth that Croatia don't. And, I would say Spain do have a stronger squad, in my opinion. But I see what you're saying.
I think they probably do as well, but it's not 74% was wild to me. I was like, I would have said it was way more even than that.
Yeah, I would agree as well. It shouldn't be 74%. I think for me, France-Switzerland is probably going to be the most nailed-on result.
And the one you think could be an upset could be Italy-Austria. Oh, that'd be so spicy.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I could see any one of these teams upsetting. I could see Croatia beating Spain. I could see Switzerland nabbing like a 1-0 win, or just at least taking it into maybe extra time and penalties. So, yeah, we shall see. And then Belgium-Portugal, I haven't mentioned just because obviously Belgium are the favourites in that game, but Portugal are a good enough side that I don't think they're like massively underdogs.
They really are. Well, that sort of segues quite nicely into the last question I have for you before we wrap up this special episode, which is the matchup that you're most looking forward to seeing? Obviously, you mentioned Belgium-Portugal there, which is sort of the biggest sort of Clash of the Titans one. Is that the one you're most looking forward to, or is there another game, obviously aside from England versus Germany, that's really you can't wait to kick off?
Yeah, England-Germany, number one, far and above. I would say Italy-Austria I'm excited for. And then also, on the right-hand side, Wales-Denmark I think could be a really fun game. Because both sides are going in with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of dynamism, and I could see that being quite a good free-flowing game.
Yeah, that's exactly what I have as well. Obviously, Belgium-Portugal I think is going to be a fantastic game, and the other one I have is Denmark-Wales that I think is going to be really exciting because, firstly, the two teams are relatively even. I think Denmark are a little bit stronger as a team, but Wales have more individual star quality, which I think is always a very interesting interaction between two sides. And I also think, as you said, that the game is going to be quite open. Like, I have this feeling that Spain versus Croatia, I also think, because I was just saying those teams are relatively even.
So 1-0 kind of thing?
I think that's going to be dull as shit, that game. But yeah, I think it's going to be really conservative. I may be wrong now. I hope I am, and it's like a 5-4. But something just makes me feel like that's going to be like a 1-0 or like a 0-0 in penalties. Whereas Wales Denmark, I can kind of. So what's going to happen now is Denmark Wales is going to be 1-0. Spain Croatia is going to be like 5-3. But no, I think those games, Portugal Belgium and Denmark Wales, are the ones I'm most excited for outside of obviously England Germany.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be fair, the other thing that I'm interested to see is just France take on another quote-unquote weaker side, just because they struggled against Hungary. They had so much possession and so many shots, but just couldn't get the breakthrough for a large part of it, and ended up drawing the game. So I don't think anything really in these matchups is guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, it never is. We've seen quite a few sort of close to upsets already, mainly at the hands of Hungary, bizarrely, and shout out to Hungary for taking 2 points off Germany and France. But, yeah, nothing's a guarantee in this beautiful game. I think that about wraps us up for this special episode. Don't you?
I think so too, yeah. Let's
Fantastic.
wait
Rupert,
and see what happens, eh?
Rupert, great to talk to you as always.
Cam, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for listening, and enjoy the football.
Cheers, guys. Bye.